Most people think exercise changes your body mechanically. That if you just move the muscles a certain way and in enough ways, then your body's just going to have to follow. But that's not actually how biology works, because your body is not a machine. Your body's a navigation system, and every movement you make is part of something I call your quantum GPS system. It's a system that constantly compares where you are to where you desire to be and adjusts your entire biology accordingly. Nature makes no mistakes, and your symptoms are no exception. Welcome to Mind Over Symptom, where we uncover the deeper pattern. I want to elevate our understanding of topics like technology, food, anatomy, and movement, so diet and exercise, from a classical mechanics perspective, which dominates the entire health industry, even alternative health, to a quantum mechanics perspective. Quantum mechanics was discovered over about 3 decades, starting officially in 1900, when Max Planck began talking about the smallest theoretical unit of matter, which he called the quanta. Personally, I prefer the term Planckion because I like to honor Max Planck. He was pretty brave. But terminology isn't what's important in this episode. What's important is this. If we want to use Germanic New Medicine to its full potential in our lives, in a practical way, we can't think purely in terms of classical mechanics. When we do that, nothing works quite right. Strange, unpredictable outcomes occur. We don't heal. Sometimes we can even go a little crazy trying to apply mechanical solutions to solve evolutionary problems. So today, I want to talk about this problem in the context of movement and exercise. How do we actually use the 5 biological laws to make our bodies do what we want? How do we make our bodies look the way we want so that we can feel good, have energy, be healthy, and actually enjoy life? The conventional understanding of movement and movement disorders is completely mechanistic. Movement is seen purely as a physical act driven by muscle contractions and mechanical processes, and there isn't really a consciousness behind it. But this perspective is extremely limited because it can only address poisoning, malnutrition, or injury. It cannot address the root causes of chronic health issues or the problem of our bodies not being and doing what we want. Why can't classical mechanics do that? It's because it completely overlooks the non-physical aspect of the experience of being a living form. This non-physical aspect of being alive is what actually explains why movement occurs in the first place. I'm not just talking about how to fix movement problems here. I'm talking about why movement happens at all. It's a deeply philosophical question. Without this understanding of why movement happens, the mechanistic approach fails to solve chronic pain, movement disorders, and so much more that we want to solve in relation to our bodies. And that's only talking about fixing problems. We actually want way more than that. We want to feel great. We want energy. We want vitality. We want bodies that feel alive. As students of Germanische Heilkunde, we already know something important. We know how our bodies look, move, and feel doesn't begin mechanically. It begins in the psyche. That's something we know when we learn the 5 biological laws. And I'm not just talking about walking across the room. I'm talking about every level of movement, the firmness of our skin, the shape of our bodies, our strength, flexibility, and energy, even the movement of the cells within our bodies, cells forming tumors, cells dissolving tissue or ulcerating, cells losing function. All of this is what I'm calling movement. And according to the 5 biological laws, when the body produces symptoms, it's because of a conflict in the psyche, a biological conflict. And a biological conflict forms in our psyche when an experience we desire collides with an experience we wish to avoid. When a desired experience contains within it or is attached to a not desired experience. In other words, a conflict between two desires, but they're attached to each other. So attaining one means attaining the other that we don't want. And failing to attain the thing we don't want to attain means failing to attain the thing we do want to attain. That's what a conflict is in the psyche. What does all that have to do with exercise? I mean, this conflict stuff might relate to being sick, but what does it have to do with movement and exercise? It has everything to do with what we desire when we move. When we move ourselves in a certain way, when we move our consciousness in a certain way. When we exercise, what we're desiring is to feel good, to look good, to feel youthful, to feel energized, to feel attractive. We're looking for an outcome, right? In other words, we're doing this possibly unpleasant exercises, formal effort to change, because we desire something in our body or about our body to be different than it is now. But here's the question. Do the 5 biological laws only apply when we're sick, or can they take us beyond just recovery? Can they take us to a place where we feel incredible, where we look vibrant and alive, where we feel energized and powerful? And the answer is absolutely. The 5 biological laws can take us all the way to perfection. Of course, perfection in our own estimation. There is no line where the 5 biological laws don't apply because they're natural laws. It's just like there's no line where the laws of physics stop working. But to get to perfection, we have to do something very, very difficult. We have to complete the scientific revolution. Most science today still operates inside the worldview created by the scientific revolution, which took place from the mid-1500s to the end of the 1600s. So before the mid-1500s, the universe was static. That's how we understood everything. People believed life was mostly outside their control. And then, with the scientific revolution, classical mechanics arrived. And suddenly, we believed that we could push limits, we could experiment, we could improve things, we could extend life, because we got this idea that the universe is a clockwork. Everything's pushing and pulling and gears and pulleys. And if we just find which thing knocks into the other thing, which billiard ball bounces off the other billiard ball, which force is being applied where, and which part of the machine is broken and so on, then we can make a change. And this worldview dominated the science for centuries, from 1700 to today. That's what has dominated science. But something happened in 1887. An experiment called the Michelson-Morley experiment failed. This experiment was trying to detect something that scientists believed existed, something called the ether. This was the substance that supposedly carried energy through space. So this is where the invisible pulleys and gears and strings that were making the mechanics move were happening in this ether. But the Michelson-Morley experiment failed because it demonstrated there was no ether. And that discovery changed everything. It meant the universe wasn't a giant machine of gears and pulleys, and energy and matter were moving according to strange rules that mechanical thinking couldn't explain. After this shock, a few scientists began exploring the mystery, and one of them was Max Planck. In 1900, he proposed that energy exists in tiny discrete units called quanta. Over the next decades, physicists developed ideas about photons, electrons, and atoms. And this work led to the technology we rely on today, including the internet. But while we use these discoveries, we still don't actually fully accept the implications of these discoveries, because the implications are strange. They suggest something profound. And that is that physical reality behaves as if something non-physical is guiding it. Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance. He did not like it. I once asked Grok to explain this like I'm 5 years old. And here's how Grok explained classical mechanics versus quantum mechanics. Imagine 2 toy boxes. The big toy box is classical mechanics. That's where you put your big toys. That's where they live. Cars, dolls, balls. If you push a toy car, it rolls until it hits something. Everything behaves predictably according to Newton's laws. But then there's the tiny toy box. That's quantum mechanics. In the tiny toy box, the toys behave strangely. They can act like particles or waves. They can disappear and reappear. They can influence each other even when they aren't touching. It's like magic. So quantum physics actually reveals something else really important. Reality works in binary, yes or no, 1 or 0. And this matches exactly how the psyche works. The way you use your psyche is you use it to constantly evaluate reality using yeses and nos, your personal feeling of yes versus no. It's binary. And here's how this actually works in your mind. So if I am using my psyche to perceive red, I am simultaneously saying no to every other color. So whenever I think any thought, if I'm thinking red, I'm simultaneously thinking not green, not black, not brown, not purple, not blue, and so on. And this is the binary language that informs your brain. This is the machine language of your brain. And your brain, of course, is the mediator between your psyche and your body. So your body's like the hardware, your brain is the computer, and your psyche is your user interface. And you, of course, are the user. You are the non-physical something that's behind all of this. What this means is something very profound. All movement in your body, at the cellular level, at the subcellular level, and all the way up to your body as a whole, all movement begins with desire. This is where the idea of the quantum GPS system comes in. Your body's not a machine, it's not gears and pulleys. Your body is this navigation system, and every GPS system works the same way. First, it measures where you are, it analyzes where you're at, then it compares that to where you want to be, and then it makes adjustments. And your brain does the exact same thing. Your desires create the destination, your current state is the starting point, and your body adjusts itself step by step, and every step along the way becomes the next reference point. Your body right now is just the destination that your brain previously navigated you to. Problems arise when we stop having a destination, when we simply say, I don't want to be here. That turns our destination into avoidance. Instead of moving towards something, we're only trying to move away from something. So when we do exercise purely to escape a problem, it's like telling your GPS, just get me away from here. The system has no clear destination, and so it sort of wanders, and it tends to just wander around the problem. It doesn't have any actual destination. So you're just going in circles. Movement itself doesn't mechanically transform your body. Movement provides feedback to your psyche. So when you move, you experience your desires, your frustrations, your disappointments, your hopes, and that awareness is what lets you use your psyche to resolve conflicts. Exercise becomes a form of therapy for your psyche, not a mechanical repair job for muscles. There's a saying that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but that's not quite true. The journey actually begins with a desire. A destination appears in your psyche. You, the non-physical consciousness that is your essential, eternal self, you generate the desire. That desire then appears in your psyche as a destination. In fact, we can watch the desire appear in your psyche by hooking a whole bunch of electrodes up to your brain and watching brain activity. There's a zone in your prefrontal cortex, which Dr. Hammer called the psychic zone or the window of the soul, seat of the soul. And we can watch on a computer screen where, boom, an idea winks into existence, a thought forms, boom, nothing and then something forms, and it forms in this location in your brain, and then it's just immediately, once the brain receives that instruction, it's very quickly at the speed of electricity, sends it all over the place, turns it into visions and sounds and movements and motor outputs and so on. So the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a desire, which causes a destination to appear, boom, in the psyche, and the brain receives that as an instruction, and then the first actual step happens. Movement provides the feedback that allows the navigation system to keep on adjusting. So if you think about the GPS system in your car, if you just sit in your driveway and say, car, come on, go somewhere, it has no idea what to do. Even when you program in the destination, your car actually still has no idea what to do until you start rolling out the driveway. Then it gets to triangulate where I've been, where I am now. That tells my car where I'm going. And now it can say, oh, you need to turn left a bit. You need to go more to the right. That's how GPS works. There has to be movement to provide the feedback to keep the system adjusting. So if you want to use movement in a way that truly works to make a change, not only in your physical body, but in your whole experience, the key is awareness. Move, but observe your desires as you move. Notice where you are. Notice what you want. Notice the feelings arise when those two things don't match, because this is your actual feedback system. This is the navigation system. This is your quantum GPS. And once you start working with it consciously, something amazing happens. The journey itself becomes beautiful. This has been Mind Over Symptom with Lishwi Springford, where symptoms are not the enemy and you are your own authority. For more, visit mindtreehealth.co.